Hello and welcome to Mike's Garage. First thing is, if you've already subscribed, great. If you haven't subscribed, please do. And when you do, please tap on the notification bell so you'll be notified every time we put up a new video. Okay, this has been a really wild week, probably for everybody. I am not going to whine and groan because I know everybody's going through it at one level or another. This is almost a real test for me. I said someday I was going to retire and I was going to stay home and build my motorcycles. That's what I'm doing, and no matter what happens, if my whole neighborhood should catch on fire, no matter what, I'm building my motorcycle. So, slow as it may be, I'm building my motorcycle. And it will get interrupted because my other motorcycle is getting a new ignition system, so we may install that in the next few days when it comes. I don't know. We'll see. The other thing I wanted to mention was the front end. I spoke to the guys at the frame shop today. They are really nice guys, and they said, hey, we're sorry, we're backed up, yada, 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 and we will do our best to have that front end out for you next week. Hey, you know, that's as much as I could ask for. If I can have that front end next week, I'll be a happy boy because they're going to do a beautiful job on it. Anyway, so I've been trying to figure out how I can build a motorcycle without a front end on it. Now, I've got it held up in the back by the rear wheel, and I've got a jack in the front, and I'm just doing little operations here. Now, I understand everybody has their own method of going at these things. And if you don't develop one, in other words, I build things the way I build things, and you should build things the way you build things. Everyone, I guess what I'm saying is a motorcycle to me, a hand-built, home-built motorcycle, is one of the most personal things I can think of. It's personal like my dog is personal. It's personal. And it's for me, and therefore I want it done my way, even in the order that I assemble it, which may look a little bit disorganized, but we're just adding to it every day. So what I decided I should show is how to install the transmission. Now, we showed that on the shovelhead once before, but now we're working with a rigid frame flathead, which is the same as a knuckle or a pan or a shovel or anything else that you might have crammed into a rigid frame. So what I did was I cleaned up this old transmission plate, which was chrome at one time, and believe it or not, with the transmission in place, all you can see is beautiful bright chrome. The only place you can see that it's not is back here, because when the transmission's in it, the edges are beautiful. It really looks nice. Now, back here, which looks pretty rough, we'll probably order a new one of these. This is a buddy peg bracket, and it goes right here, and will certainly cover most of it. Let's see, does that, yeah, that goes like that. I think it goes like that. So with the transmission in there, and then the pegs go on the ends. Anyway, that's just an old passenger peg bracket that I happen to have laying around. I have the same type one on my knucklehead, and it works real well. I believe it was made, in fact, I know it was made by Paco. Anyway, so here is the transmission plate in place. Before you start mounting engine and or transmission, invest in one of these. This is a $5 or $6 item you can buy at any good hardware store, called an angle finder or a, I can't think of the word right now, clinometer. It's a clinometer. Okay, and it tells you the different degrees of the angle of this thing. In other words, I can find that this transmission plate and the motor mount are at the same angle. I can see the indicator on this clinometer. Clinometer, I remembered it. Anyway, so that's the way to do it. Now I've already bolted the transmission plate in place. Generally, if you're doing a repair on one of these, you take the transmission and the transmission plate out together. R&Ring it on the transmission is the easiest way. Since the oil tank is not in yet, the fender is not even attached yet, I can set the transmission right in place. Now, we have already ascertained, like that ascertained, we have already ascertained that the motor mounts are flat and level, as is the mount for the transmission plate. So that being said, I scrounged up a bunch of hardware. I'm using all chrome hardware to hold the plate down, but on the bottom of the transmission, I went to the hardware store and I bought a bunch of stuff that I think is real first-class, good quality hardware that's real working hardware. In fact, I even looked in the parts book, and they call out the same stuff I was going to use. I just bought some real high-quality hardware. This is not chrome-plated. It's going under the motorcycle, so you're not going to see it. Here's a flat washer, here's a lock washer, and here is the nut. These are all 3/8. The nut is a fine thread, and that will go on. This will go onto the bottom. This one out here is the 5th bolt. Before I put the transmission in place, there are 4 studs on the bottom of the transmission. They drop through these 4 slots. The reason these are slotted is so the transmission can move fore and aft to adjust the primary chain. Now, this is not going to have a primary chain. It's going to have a belt drive on the primary. It'll have a chain final drive, but it will have a belt primary drive. Just the same, we'll have to adjust the tension. So that transmission will be moved fore and aft on this plate. This out here on one side is where the 5th bolt goes. So we always call the 5th bolt. I'm sure there's a proper term for it. But all 4 of the studs on the bottom of the transmission case go into the slots, and the 5th bolt is right out the side. And Mike is probably showing it to you right now. And this is where the insert was cast into the transmission, right here, where that 5th bolt goes. You always want to be careful you don't get one too long, or you can screw it in nice and tight and break right through the bottom of the transmission case. It's not really that funny. I was real embarrassed. Happened many years ago. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to set the transmission in place. Not too difficult. Like I said, with nothing else in the way, it's pretty easy. And the magical words, and there it is. Doesn't sound quite as heavy as in Let There Be Light or something like that, but it's still pretty cool. I think I'm standing on my microphone cord. Okay, so as I put these nuts and washers on the bottom, I'm not going to tighten them up because we'll do that when we actually do a final assembly. But I must say, this transmission looks pretty wonderful in here. All right. I think what I'll do is get these under here real well. And then I'll go over there and do the other 2 on the other side, and the 5th bolt out the side. That 5th bolt is a real important thing. It really does stabilize the whole thing because you're bolting directly to the frame, and it really matters. I also want to show, there's something else I want to show over there. So let me get this one started. And I did. All right. Now, I'm going to have to go around the back of the bike, which shouldn't be too hard. Let me get all the hardware moved over there. Okay. Now we're over here on the right side of the bike, and I can show the installation of the hardware from here. I think. One washer, two washer. I got a flat washer. I always like a nice big flat washer, and I was really pleased to find I had these in my parts. These are really nice, nicely made flat washers, and I don't remember where I got them, which kind of burns me up a little bit, but I'd like to do that again. Okay. Now we can pretend that the fourth one is hidden, not waste anyone's time here. What I want to do is put the fifth bolt in. Again, here's one of those really nice flat washers I found. And here's a lock washer and a brand new bolt. So I'm going to put that into that hole where that insert is in the bottom of the transmission case. And I can't see this, so I probably ought to stand up. And again, there it is. Okay. Now again, we're not going to tighten all this up, but as you can see, the transmission does slide fore and aft. And that way we'll be able to set everything up. So we've got all 5 of those in. And I wanted to show this out the side here. I don't have the bolt on it right now. We'll maybe show it in the next video. But the bolt goes right here, lays in this bracket, which is bolted to the back of the transmission plate. And the bolt goes through there and into the back of the transmission case. When you tighten that bolt with the transmission loosened up, it brings the transmission right back to you. Just slides it right back in all those slotted places. Okay, I hope that was a good example of what we're doing. I remember learning this many years ago, and it was all like some sort of a big mystery to me, till I found out how simple it really was. This is a nice, simple system for adjusting the primary drive. Works very well. The only thing to remember is that once you adjust it, once you back this transmission up, and you've adjusted your primary, now you've thrown your clutch or shifter, whether you're a hand shift or a foot shift, you've thrown it all out of adjustment. And of course, if you've slid this back to tighten your primary, you've now loosened your rear chain, so now you have to adjust the rear wheel. I really got good at it when I got my panhead, and I got to the point where I could do it in about 1 cup of coffee. I could get it all adjusted, and I was really pleased, but I had to do it every 2 weeks. That primary chain was driving me nuts. Finally, I pulled it off and put a belt drive on it and never looked back, because I don't have to constantly adjust the belt drive. So I hope that's good information for today. In our next video, with a little luck, I'm going to want to assemble the battery tray and the oil tank. And maybe we can even get this fender in place. I don't know. I think in order to get that in place, I'd really like to have a front end on it. So we'll see if we get a front end before the next video. In the meantime, I guess that's it for today. So See you out on the road.